Well, hello! Welcome back to Supposedly Fun, and Happy New Year! We are officially in 2021. This is the first video I am filming in the year 2021. It's my December book haul. I did not manage to get it in before the end of December, so I'm doing it now, and that's fine. Lots of exciting stuff coming, because since I didn't really get to film a whole lot over the week between Christmas and New Year's, I still have my December reading wrap-up. I'm going to start talking about my best of 2020, and maybe, I don't know if I'm going to do a worst of 2020. Now, I know a lot of people have been talking about that, and there's been a little bit of controversy. But for me, it's not really that I don't think you should talk about bad books, or I don't think you should not talk about bad books. It's just that I had a really great reading year, so there's nothing I really hated all that much. But anyway, I'll figure that out. All of that is to come. We're going to do my book haul today. I hope you had a great holiday. If you celebrate, I hope you enjoyed New Year's Eve. I hope you had safe celebrations and found ways to enjoy the time without taking any undue risks. It was a quiet holiday season for us, but that actually ended up being kind of nice. And I got a lot of reading done in December, so my reading wrap-up for December is going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to wrapping up 2020, but first, we have to talk about the things that I brought into my library in December. And this does not include Christmas gifts, because my husband gave me a gift card, which I used to order some things from my local indie, which should be here in time for my January book haul. So that is all to come. Like the Christmas gift stuff is still to come. This is stuff that came in other ways. The first one is a bit of an oddity, because I didn't realize, but I entered a contest on Book Riot, and I didn't realize that as part of the entering the contest, you were sent a copy of a book. And the book was Balcony of Fog by Shapero. Had never heard of it. It comes from Too Far Media. And let's jump right into the plot of the book, and then we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. So, in a storm-ravaged corner of post-nuclear America, Arden is left for dead after a brutal beating from his superior. On waking, he encounters Estra, a lost woman of mysterious origin whom he smuggles into his cell. Desperate and now in love, the two resolve to escape to the place from which Estra has come, the Cloud Realm. Together they ascend to the skies and make their home on a vacant cumulus where Estra initiates Arden into the ways of the vaporous world. On the horizon looms a thunderhead, growing larger and more monstrous as it consumes the clouds in its path. The thunderhead is following them, and Estra knows and fears the man driving it. As the hidden truths of Estra's past emerge, Arden despairs, and then, with Estra's encouragement and guidance, determines to fight back. Mixing the sublimity of fair weather skies with the nightmarish violence of electric storms, Balcony of Fog illuminates the tension between the power of love and the love of power. If you follow along at all, you know that does not sound like the type of book I would ordinarily pick up. It's very sci-fi fantasy, sounds a little post-apocalyptic, maybe dystopian, and outside of the Hunger Games, I'm really not too into those. So I want to share it. I mean, that's not a reflection on the book at all. It could be great. It's just not something I would have picked for myself, and I'm not sure it's something that I would get to at all. So I'm trying to decide if I want to let this hang around, or if I'm just going to trade it in at my local used bookstore. To be determined on that, but that is likely the way it's going to go. And I wanted to talk about it first because, well, two things. I'm going to try to go in the order that I brought these books into my library, and I kind of wanted to talk about this one first because I don't know if it's actually going to join my library yet. So this one is kind of like a question mark, and I'm going to think about it. Like I said, I'm trying to explore genres that I don't usually engage with, and this is definitely one of those. So I haven't made up my mind yet. We shall see. If you have thoughts, if you've heard of this book, please let me know in the comment section down below, because that would be very helpful. Moving along to the second book, it's kind of in the same realm, but it's something I actively sought out. So if you follow along, you know that one of the genres I wanted to get to last year was romance. And I had read a couple of LGBTQ romances with gay and lesbian characters over the years, but I'm not too familiar with the genre in general. But mainly, I heard that Stacey Abrams writes romance novels under the name Selena Montgomery. So basically, I just went to one of my local indies and said, hey, I heard that she writes romance novels. If you can order one for me, I would do it. Because I wanted to do something to support Stacey Abrams after the election, and I know Stacey Abrams has political books that she wrote under her own name, but I kind of figured what better way to honor someone than to show some support for their side hustle, the thing that they do because they love doing it. So I ordered one, and I still do want, I had a kind of failed attempt to read a romance novel, An Extraordinary Union, in December. So I definitely want to try again, because I think there are things about the genre that I would really like. I spent almost all of December watching holiday-themed romance movies. So there's a way I can enjoy the genre, and I think this would be a good way to do it. So, getting to the plot, she kind of seems to write mystery thriller-ish romances, which could be a fun angle to try. Always in control, independent, stunning, and smart, Kel Jamison has the life she's always dreamed about. A partner at a Tony Atlanta law firm that represents famous, if guilty, clients, she's far from her days as a lonely orphan in rural Georgia. But one frantic phone call will bring her back to the place she spent years trying to escape. The head of her childhood orphanage has been accused of murder, and Kel is her only hope for freedom. From the first moment Kel meets Sheriff Luke Calder, tempers and attraction flare. Ruggedly handsome and a stickler for law and order, Luke finds Kel compelling. Unfortunately, she represents his prime suspect. Forced to work together, they dig deep into the town's scandals, but Kel has a secret of her own. She trusts Luke enough to fall in love, but does she trust him enough to reveal the reckless past she's worked so hard to keep hidden? And it sounds really interesting. I'm kind of looking forward to this. And like I said, I really just wanted to do something to support Stacey Abrams, and I thought a fun way to do that would be to support her passion project. So there you go. That is Reckless by Selena Montgomery, published by Avon. By the way, the time of day I'm doing this, and the window is putting a little bit of glare on the books. Hopefully it's not too annoying. Now we get to some 3 books I got from Book of the Month. First is The Office of Historical Corrections, a novella, End Stories by Danielle Evans. I believe the novella is the one that the book collection is titled for. And I'm really looking forward to this. I had not really heard too much about it when I saw it as one of the options, but it was the one that jumped out to me the most of that month's offerings. And then I subsequently started hearing really great things about it here on BookTube and on Instagram. So I'm really excited that I chose this. So, jumping to the description. Danielle Evans' short fiction has long inspired devotion and celebration. In the Office of Historical Corrections, she brings her blisteringly smart voice and X-ray insights to the subjects of race and U.S. history. With this novella and stories, Evans considers how and why some people choose to confront history and others to outrun it. In one story, a white college student tries to reinvent herself after a photo featuring her in a Confederate flag bikini goes viral. In another, a daughter takes her mother on a tour of a prison that tore her family apart decades earlier. And in the eye-opening title novella, a black scholar from Washington, D.C. is drawn into a complex historical mystery that spans generations and puts her job, her love life, and her oldest friendship at risk. Moving between humor and grief, Evans portrays characters who are experiencing the universal confusion of lust and love and getting walloped by sorrow, all while exploring how history haunts us personally and collectively. Ultimately, she provokes us to think about the truths of U.S. history, about who gets to tell them, and the cost of setting the record straight. I mean, right there, especially in that last paragraph, you can probably see what really made this book jump out to me and why I'm so interested in getting to it. I think this is going to be fascinating. I'm really looking forward to it. By the way, I usually read first sentences of these books, and I completely forgot to do that. So let's jump back in time and do Balcony of Fog by Rich Shapero. Chapter 1. Through a ceiling of fog, the storm flashed, blanching the night and the drenched forest. The men in the narrow canyon looked up. Each wore a head bulb strapped to his brow. One of the bulbs was shorting. Arden joggled the bulb, but it wouldn't stop blinking. The rain slashed, the wind hooked him and rasped in his ears, while the invisible thunderhead rumbled, brewing a fresh charge. I don't know about that. We shall see. Going back to Reckless by Selena Montgomery, who's really Stacey Abrams. Chapter 1. He didn't have to look inside the room to know what lay in wait. Sheriff Luke Calder hiked up the last of the 3 flights of narrow, rickety stairs, already snapping latex gloves onto his hands. The stench that hung in the claustrophobic stairwell belonged to one source only: the dead. And there you go. That's intriguing. It's a little weird to do a first sentence of a story collection, even if it includes a novella, but why not? Let's do it. So I used to only do the first sentence, and I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. kind of just do the opening. So the first story is Happily Ever After. When Lissa was 7, her mother took her to see the movie Where the Mermaid Wants Legs, and when it ended, Lissa shook her head and squinted at the prince and said, "Why would she leave her family for that?" Which for years contributed to the prevailing belief that she was sentimental or soft-hearted, when in fact she just knew a bad trade when she saw one. That is really interesting. I'm not gonna lie. So far, these two have had kind of compelling openings. Then, so Lolly Willows was apparently the very first Book of the Month Club selection, and I had never actually paid very close attention to it, and then I read the premise of it, and it sounded really interesting, so I snapped it up. So I think you'll see why when we do the description. This novel tells the story of an unmarried woman who refuses to conform to the life that her family and society expects her to live. A bold and beguiling tale about personal freedom, uneasy friendships, and witchcraft, Lolly Willows remains as relevant and entertaining today as it was when originally published more than 90 years ago. I mean, that's not a really thorough description, but I think you can see what's interesting about it. So it was published in 1926, and it's about a woman not conforming to society's expectations. I mean, sign me up. I'm really interested in that. This is published by, not on the side, so let's find the book details. This is actually in the public domain, and it was first published by Viking Press, and I guess Book of the Month Club actually publishes it now. Now let's do the opening sentence. When her father died, Laura Willows went to live in London with her elder brother and his family. I'm not going to go any further than that because it gets into dialogue, which would probably be weird and difficult to read, but that is Lolly Willows by Sylvia Townsend Warner, and it sounds intriguing. Like something, definitely like something I would be interested in reading. Then I picked up a copy of The Moor's Account by Laila Lalami. I always have trouble saying that name, Laila Lalami. I did read a different book by Laila Lalami last year. It was the Other Americans. Maybe it was the year before. But anyway, I read it. I really liked the first half. I didn't like the second, but I was always intrigued by her writing and the way it felt like the narrative unfolded like a fan. And she was a Pulitzer Prize finalist for this book, which kind of immediately intrigued me as well. So, and I heard good things about it somewhere. I'm really good at noting, I'm really bad at noting down where I hear about things. So I can't remember where, but I heard something randomly about it being interesting, so I figured I would pick it up. In this stunning work of historical fiction, Laila Lalami brings us the imagined memoirs of the first Black explorer of America, a Moroccan slave whose testimony was left out of the official record. In 1527, the conquistador Panfilo de Narvaez sailed from the port of San Clar de Barrameda with a crew of 600 men and nearly 100 horses. His goal was to claim what is now the Gulf Coast of the United States for the Spanish crown and, in the process, become as wealthy and famous as Hernan Cortez. But from the moment the Narvaez expedition landed in Florida, it faced peril, navigational errors, disease, starvation, as well as resistance from indigenous tribes. Within a year, there were only 4 survivors: the expedition's treasurer, Cabeza de Vaca, a Spanish nobleman named Alonso del Castillo, a young explorer named Andre Dorantes, and Dorantes' Moroccan slave, Mustafa al-Zamori, whom the other 3 Spaniards called Estebanico. These 4 survivors would go on to make a journey across America that would transform them from proud conquistadors to humble servants, from fearful outcasts to faith healers. I mean, I think you can get a sense of why this seemed really interesting to me, and again, it was a Pulitzer Prize finalist, and I heard something good about it, so why not snap it up? Don't know when I'll get around to reading it, but I think this is a fun book to have around, so I can get to it. Like I said, I did enjoy parts of the other book by Laila Lalami that I read. This is published by Pantheon. Chapter 1, The Story of La Florida. It was the year 934 of the Hegira, the 30th year of my life, the 5th year of my bondage, and I was at the edge of the known world. I mean, I'm going to leave it right there because that right there kind of has me intrigued, as I had a feeling the book would. Then we get to some things I picked up toward the end of the month at my local used bookstore, Book Exchange. Because I had a gift card, I wanted to go in and see if they had anything I could get cheap or used, so I wouldn't have to order it with my gift card. And if you follow along at all, you know that I have been trying to recollect all of the Sue Grafton mysteries. I used to have all of them, and then somewhere along the way, in order to condense space on my bookshelves, I decided, well, these take up a lot of space, and if I ever reread them, I'm much more likely to do it as an ebook. I used to read ebooks. I don't anymore. So now the problem is, I got rid of all my physical copies, and now I'm rereading them in physical form, but I don't have all of them. So I picked up 2 that I was missing. J is for Judgment and I is for Innocent. And I won't spend too much time. So the other thing is I had found 2 of them with these kind of vintage covers, and I didn't quite like that they didn't match the rest of the ones that I have, but then I figured it's fine because the initial books in the series were white, and then they're not after a certain point. And then if I have some that has a couple of different ones that have this vintagey look, then then eclectic becomes the matching of them. I know it's Greg logic. I don't know. Does it make sense? You tell me. So in I is for Innocent, I remember not liking this one when I first read it. So I'm interested to get back to it because my opinion on some of them that I remembered liking has changed, and my opinion on some of the ones that I didn't think I liked has changed as well. So in this one, since she was fired by California Fidelity Insurance, Kinsey Milhone has lost her usual swagger, and her new case is no confidence builder. Attorney Lonnie Kingman is going to court on a civil suit in 3 weeks when his PI drops dead of a heart attack. With the statute of limitations running out, Kinsey has to tie up the loose ends of a murder investigation. The victim, an affluent artist named Isabel Barney, had been shot with a .38. Her husband, David Barney, was tried and acquitted of the murder. Now her ex-husband is suing Barney for Isabel's estate, claiming the jury made a big mistake. Things get complicated when Barney gets to Kinsey, insisting he's innocent. Everything he says checks out, but if David Barney is innocent, who's guilty? In trying to learn who's been getting away with murder, Kinsey may be courting her own. That's I is for Innocent by Sue Grafton. This edition is published by Ballantine Books. In Chapter 1, I feel compelled to report that at the moment of death, my entire life did not pass before my eyes in a flash. Well, that's interesting. And that's I is for Innocent. This is also published by Ballantine's. J is for Judgment. Let's run through really quickly. Wendell Jaff has been dead for 5 years, until his former insurance agent spots him in a dusty resort bar. Now California Fidelity wants Kinsey Milhone to track down the dead man. Just 2 months before, his widow collected on Jaff's $500,000 life insurance policy, her only legacy since Jaff went overboard, bankrupt, and about to be indicted for his fraudulent real estate schemes. As Kinsey pushes deeper into the mystery surrounding Wendell Jaff's suicide, she explores her own past, discovering that in family matters, as in crime, sometimes it's better to reserve judgment. And let's see, Chapter 1. On the face of it, you wouldn't think there was any connection between the murder of a dead man and the events that changed my perceptions about my life. And there you have it. I love Sue Grafton. I just do. Another one I picked up at my local used bookstore was 10 Minutes, 38 Seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak. This is a book I've had my eyes on ever since it was longlisted for the Booker Prize, not this past year, but the year before that. It was on the shortlist the year that there was a tie between The Testaments and Girl, Woman, Other. And it always sounded really interesting to me. And I kind of had it on my radar and was keeping an eye out for it, and it was, after it was in paperback, I just kept holding off on publishing it. I found it at my local used bookstore for half the price and snapped it up, because otherwise this is probably something I would have broken down and ordered with my gift card at the other store. So if you're unfamiliar with this, in the pulsating moments after she has been murdered and left in a dumpster outside Istanbul, Tequila Laila enters a state of heightened awareness. Her heart has stopped beating, but her brain is still active for 10 minutes and 38 seconds. While the Turkish sun rises and her friends sleep soundly nearby, she remembers her life and the lives of others, outcasts like her. Tequila Laila's memories bring us back to her childhood in the provinces, a highly oppressive milieu with religion and traditions shaped by a polygamous family with 2 mothers and an increasingly authoritarian father. Escaping to Istanbul, Laila makes her way into the sordid industry of sex trafficking, finding a home in the city's historic street of brothels. This is a dark, violent world, but Laila is tough and open to beauty, light, and the essential bonds of friendship. In Tequila Laila's death, the secrets and wonders of modern Istanbul come to life, painted vividly by the captivating tales of how Laila came to know and be loved by her friends. As her epic journey to the afterlife comes to an end, it is her chosen family who brings her story to a buoyant and breathtaking conclusion. So obviously, not a happy book, but definitely an intriguing book. I've heard a lot of really great things about it. I've heard a couple of negative things, but mostly positive. And I've been wanting to read it ever since it was on the long list, so I'm glad I finally own a copy. This is published, looks like Bloomsbury, from the logo on the side. Yep, it is Bloomsbury. And let's do, oh, it has a map. If you follow along, you know I love a book with a map. So right away, it got me. Her name was Laila, Tequila Laila, as she was known to her friends and her clients. Tequila Laila, as she was called at home and at work in that rosewood-colored house on a cobblestoned cul-de-sac down by the wharf, nestled between a church and a synagogue, among lamb shops and kebab shops, the street that harbored the oldest licensed brothels in Istanbul. There you go. Really looking forward to getting to that one. And while I was at the used bookstore, another book I had been keeping an eye on, or an eye out for, was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And they had a copy of the standalone paperback, which they haven't usually. They're usually out of it every time I go there. And it's a book I've heard a lot about. It's a book that a lot of people have kind of named one of the best classics, a great American novel, anything in that regard. It's by Betty Smith. So they had the individual paperback, but they also had this really pretty old edition. Let me not have glare, but there she is. That's Betty Smith, with 2 novels in one for 2 cents more than the individual paperback. And I was really struggling with this. I was talking to my husband about it because it's really pretty, but this is clearly an edition from 1969 because it was signed by someone and dated January of 1969. So it's an old edition, and I thought, well, if I get this one, as pretty as it is, am I going to want to read it? And we looked at it. The type size is really good. The book seems like it's in good condition, so why not? And it's pretty. And I don't know if I'm ever going to want to read Maggie-Now, but better to have the option than to close the door completely. So why not do it, especially since it's the same price? So if you're unfamiliar, let's do the premise of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is the ever-popular bestseller that put Betty Smith in the forefront of modern novelists. It is the story of Francie Nolan and the world of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, that made her. A story of tears and laughter, cruelty and compassion, so crowded with life and people that no description can begin to convey its spell. From the moment she entered the world, Francie needed to know toughness, for life in Williamsburg was lived without kid gloves. You faced up to it or you went down, and Katie Nolan's children were not the kind to go down. It was no matter if the neighbors scorned the Nolans because of Johnny's liking for the bottle and because Aunt Sissy had a habit of marrying many times without the formality of divorce. Aunt Sissy was bad, but she was good too. She was good because wherever she was, there was life. Fine, tender, overwhelming, fun-loving, and strong-scented life. And in a different way, Johnny had something of the same quality. Betty Smith has caught this sense of life in a novel rich in the elements of universal experience. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn has remained an all-time bestseller because within the compass of its characters is all of humanity. The good, the bad, the pitiful, and the ridiculous, and those with stardust in their eyes. So I'm really looking forward to reading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Maggie-Now I had never even heard of, so let's do the description of that. Maggie-Now is a Betty Smith heroine in the tradition of Francie Nolan. A Catholic girl of Irish parentage, Maggie-Now grew up in Brooklyn at the turn of the century, a time when the old-fashioned virtues were still in vogue. That is why her family and close friends were so shocked when, at the age of 23, this practical-minded girl upped and married the handsome, charming ne'er-do-well, Claude Bassett. Every spring, Claude would leave her when a Chinook wind blew up from the west, and every fall he would return to his Maggie-Now to fill her life with love, wonder, and splendor beyond belief. Betty Smith paints a warm and compelling portrait of this lovely, often naive Irish girl who, in spite of her moments of disappointment and pain, was able to live a life of exuberance and happiness. And that sounds good too. I've just never heard of it. So if you are familiar with Maggie-Now, please let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. But I'm really glad I finally have a copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And I do like having old vintage editions of books. So I'm happy I have this one. Let's do the opening lines of both. By the way, this edition is published by Harper & Row. But obviously, it is very old. So, beginning of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Serene was a word you could put to Brooklyn, New York, especially in the summer of 1912. Somber as a word was better, but it did not apply to Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Prairie was lovely, and Shenandoah had a beautiful sound, but you couldn't fit those words into Brooklyn. Serene was the only word for it, especially on a Saturday afternoon in summer. And now let's do Maggie-Now. Young Patrick Dennis Moor wore the tightest pants in all of County Kilkenny. Well, that's already intriguing. He was the only boyo in the village who cleaned his fingernails, and his thick black shiny hair had the widest, cleanest part in all of Ireland. Or so it was said. Well, isn't that intriguing? So, there you go. Those are the 8 books that I brought into my library in the month of December. If you've read any, if you have opinions, let me know, especially if you are familiar at all with Balcony of Fog or Maggie-Now, because those are entirely new to me titles, and I would love your feedback. And that's it for now. I will say stay tuned again, because next week I am going to do my December reading wrap-up. I'll do my 2020 wrap-up, whatever form that's going to take. I'll talk about my goal wrap-up for 2020, my new goal for 2021. Lots of stuff coming up. So if you follow along, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you don't, I appreciate your time watching this, especially if you've gotten this far into this video. And as always, I will be back. Happy New Year and happy reading.